Borderlands was my childhood, and over the years it's evolved so much. I remember back in 2009 when the game was extremely basic, farming Cormorants over and over again until midnight with friends, and then in 2012 I remember basically every single gameplay and feature in the game being turned up to 11. Everything was just bigger and better in the sequel, and also the story and characters were just so good here. And then after Borderlands, the pre-sequel didn't quite hit the mark. It felt like we were never going to get a third entry in the series, but then 2019 came along and brought us Borderlands 3. I've put hundreds of hours into this game and absolutely love it. Besides the story and characters, they're not that great in this one. But the thing that this game did was basically split the fan base in half. There were the people that wanted to adopt this new Borderlands going forward, and others that just preferred what Borderlands 2 and the previous titles were. And then after some spin-offs like Tiny Tina Wonderlands, which I actually quite enjoyed, in 2025 now we're getting Borderlands 4, and I'm really interested to see if they're going to go down the path of catering to the newer audience, or they're going to bring back some of those Borderlands 2 features that the older fans would appreciate. Stuff, you know, that's simple, like making legendaries actually legendary. If you've played Borderlands 3, you'll know that there's basically a legendary every single second. Point is, I love this series, and if you're going back to play the older games in preparation for this new one, then what you're going to find is that they're not as good as you would hope them to be. Time hasn't really been kind to them, with stuttering, crashing, and also there's loads of mods here, so there's a lot to go through. If you haven't already guessed by the title, Borderlands 2 is the game that we're going to be covering in this video. So join me as we see how deep this rabbit hole truly goes, and also celebrate the franchise as a whole. This is how I renewed Borderlands 2. Firstly though, Borderlands and games very similar to it are super addicting. Think of getting the perfect item drop or just leveling up your character. Everything is designed to keep you engaged and keep that dopamine hit flowing. But what if we could use these addictive gameplay loops and apply them to something like learning coding and back-end development? Well, that's what Boot.dev, today's sponsor, is exactly designed to do. This online platform is designed exactly like a video game with quests, XP, and boss fights. I tried it out for myself and loved just how hands-on the whole thing was. I'm tired of watching tutorials and reading theory. When I want to learn something, I want to actually do the thing that I'm learning, and within seconds I was writing my own code and building my own projects. With this, you're going to gain skills that will actually land you a job in this industry. You're going to learn languages such as Python, SQL, and Go, or TypeScript if you want to. Also, because this platform is designed like a massive RPG, what would an RPG be without a companion? And your companion here is going to be Boots, the AI wizard tutor. If ever you run into any roadblocks, he is going to help you get out of them, but he's not just going to give you the answers to your problems. He's going to nudge you in the right direction and make sure that you start thinking like a proper developer. Since I last checked out the platform, there's this new place called the Training Grounds that lets you grind challenges and practice before you move on to the harder stuff. If it sounds interesting, then there's no risk in trying it. Not only are all of the courses here free to read and watch, but also there's a demo for the interactivity part of it. If you then subscribe and figure out that it's not for you, they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee with no questions asked. So start building real projects and land that developer job without falling asleep mid-tutorial. Scan the QR code or use the link in the description or pinned comment to get started, and use code RETRORENEW in order to get 25% off your first year. Now let's get back to the video. Thanks to the comic book art style that this game has, it's held up tremendously well in terms of visuals. The skyboxes, for example, are really pretty in this game, up there with Skyrim. There is also a 4K HD texture pack that was released in 2019. The only caveat here is that it can cause memory issues. It can lead to stuttering and also crashing. These, however, do make a really nice improvement, so I think it's worth trying it out, but if you run into any video memory crashes or stuttering, then this may be the culprit. There's a Nexus mod that claims to fix the memory issues by installing the textures via TFC installer instead of through Steam. The only thing is, this just didn't work for me. The textures did not get replaced and they just stayed their defaults. Whilst we're on the topic of textures, there's also texture streaming, which causes the textures to be a tiny bit blurry for a few seconds before the high quality one loads in. You'll notice this when you load into new areas or walk around a bit. and if you change these 4 values to 0 within the Willow Engine INI file, it will basically eliminate that little pause. Performance is really what we want to focus on here though, because whilst you can get the game running amazingly at over 200 FPS, there is a few major issues that plague it. The first one being physics. Just leave it out completely, set it to low in the settings and just forget about it. It's a cool feature, sure, but it's not worth the headache, and especially newer GPUs like the 50 series outright don't support it anymore, so just leave it off. Next is changing the API, because this is one of those games similar to GTA 4 where changing over to Vulkan via DXVK tremendously improves the overall frame rate. It's not going to give you more frames per se, but it's going to reduce those frame rate dips and stutters. From my quick testing, this was actually by quite a lot. Like when you're in combat or looking out into the open world, you don't get those huge drops that you do on DirectX. The frame times were pretty rough as well. I was reaching my FPS cap of 237 that I set in the Nvidia control panel, but you can see the line is super choppy. The trick really here is just to use Reaver Tuner's FPS cap as opposed to anything else, and then you'll get a solid line. Honestly though, my eye really cannot spot the difference between these two, so it's not that big of a deal. What is a big deal though is some of the broken settings in the game. Broken in the way that if your PC exceeds the recommended specs, which we're talking about a 2012 game here, so that's probably a lot of you, then effects that are not in the graphics menu, like dynamic shadows, can cause stuttering. This is found under system settings in the Willow Engine INI again, and by default with it on, it makes moving objects like characters and vehicles cast shadows. Setting it to false, as you would guess, would get rid of these shadows, but can noticeably boost performance if you don't care about them. Light shafts is kind of the same thing. Really, for both of these, if you're willing to sacrifice the eye candy, then there's no reason not to do it because they're weirdly intensive for some reason, but again, I left them on and I didn't really see much of an issue. What would definitely be an issue though is the fact that by default when you kill people in this game, their bodies will stay around for an astonishing 10 minutes by default. This isn't much when there's only 1 or 2 bodies, but this game sometimes throws so many enemies at you, and the fact that every single one of these bodies is going to stay there for that long is gonna cause you performance issues. The default value is 600 seconds, and I'd recommend just setting it to something more reasonable like 120. The rest of the tweaks are stuff that people sometimes swear by, but there's no actual evidence of them actually doing anything. A lot of them are placebo, and in some cases some of the INI tweaks that I saw that I tried just outright broke my game entirely. So these are the ones that I would definitely set. The only other thing that may be useful is disabling full screen optimizations on the EXE property of the game. This, especially on Windows 11, can reduce a little bit of stuttering. I want to now turn the attention to some mods. I've linked a page below that is going to hopefully streamline everything here. I've bundled together a Vanilla Plus list of mods that aims to stick to the original as close as possible, whilst also providing some quality of life stuff. And then Extended, this is for those people that want a new, fresh experience from the game, from, new movement mechanics to overhauls to the loot, to keep things more interesting. Of course, any and all of these can be skipped. I'll cover them all here and what they do in detail so that you can decide whether they're worth it for you. All of these use Python SDK, which just allows modding support for this game. It also gives you a really handy in-game mod manager to tune all of your settings and disable or enable them. You can grab it from GitHub and then extract it into the game's directory. Now in-game you should see a mods entry on the main menu, with Python SDK being the only one that's currently there. To get mods, all you need to do is drag and drop them inside the SDK_mods folder. Some will be loose files that have SDK mod extension to them, or a folder containing Python files. Make sure to look out for any requirements on the mods page. Some of the ones that I'm going to be talking about here require extra mods, and if you don't get them, the mod just won't show up at all. There is also some mods out there that need extra steps, so always check the mods page to make sure that they don't need anything extra. One of the mods that does need a little bit of an extra step is BL2 Fix. This is the overhaul for the game. It's basically one of the most popular Borderlands 2 mods out there, and for good reason. It basically takes a lot of the issues with the base game and just fixes them. It's all fully customizable as well, so if ever you run into something that you don't like, you can just switch it off. This mod comes with an installer, but don't use that because it's quite outdated. What you want to do is open it with an archiving tool, and then right click the exe and click open inside. Then drag everything from the first folder and move it into SDK mods. Now going in game and configuring it, by default the only thing that I would change here is the fact that it skips all non-combat cutscenes. So if this is your first time playing, you're going to want to set this to all to make sure that it does not skip anything. There's also a skip dialogue keybind, which by default is Z. You can change this if you need to. This again is really for only people that have already played the game, and it's to skip large sections of dialogue in certain missions. The other mods in this category are small things like quick startup, which is self-explanatory, and then also better spawns and better travel. This one's huge. I'd consider it essential if you're used to Borderlands 3 and onwards. In those games you can fast travel from anywhere, you don't have to go back to a fast travel point, and you can also fast travel back to your vehicle by just clicking on it on the map. That basically implements those features into the game. It's implemented as seamless as it can be as well. On the map you just click your vehicle and press enter and you will TP to it. And then for the menu, by default I believe the key is F1, and then it will just open up the fast travel menu. This is one of those things where you don't realise how nice these features are to have in the later games till you come back to play the older ones. Item lights is nothing crazy, it just adds a light to all of the weapons that drop, or cash or iridium, etc. I do however really appreciate this because it's super seamless. It pretty much looks vanilla, it doesn't look like a mod at all. You can also change the brightness of the light. The reason I say it looks vanilla as well is the fact that it reacts to the game world and it also follows the item when you drop it, so this is definitely a one that you could get and then just forget that it's a mod entirely. Also, anything to just make it a less of a hassle to spot rare drops is always welcome. Loot marker also makes sure that you never miss a legendary by marking it on your map. It will show an icon and then hovering over it will tell you what exactly the item is. There isn't many more mods that I would totally recommend getting unless I've missed any of them, which please do let me know in the comments because I would love to add to this list. The thing is though, Borderlands 2 Fix adds so much to the game that a lot of the mods out there are basically obsolete because of it. This small list though should give you a really good Vanilla Plus experience, but if you want to go a step further, then the extended section of the page has some really cool stuff. Like Borderlands 2 Exodus, which is far too large to fully cover in this video, but it comes with a crazy amount of features, like 130 completely new pieces of gear, and new mechanics and mini-bosses. This is basically if you want a fresh new experience. Maybe you're bored of playing the same Borderlands 2 and you want to spice it up a bit. It's not for those where this is their first time playing the game. Sliding on the other hand is a mod that you can easily implement if it's your first time, as it is just Borderlands 3 sliding. It goes as far to make it so that when you jump you carry your momentum, and honestly I was shocked at how well done this one is. I was expecting some jank here, but if you gave this to someone that has never played Borderlands 2 before, they'd probably think that this was vanilla. I love how it actually respects physics. If you go downhill for example, it will extend your slide, and if you go uphill it will totally stop your momentum. Also, combining this with a mod called BL2 Eternal takes the game's movement from basic to on par with most shooters out there today. This one's called Eternal because it adds a Doom-like dash to the game whilst you're in midair. And also glory kills, which unfortunately isn't the cool animation that you would come to expect, but instead it just means that you insta-kill anything that is low enough. The reward for doing so though is 5 times the loot, which makes melee a whole lot more useful than it used to be. Photo mode is the next mod, and well, it's photo mode. It's not the most extensive implementation of photo mode. You pretty much just press P and then take a picture by pressing enter. You can also adjust the speed in which the camera moves and the FOV by holding F and shift and then scroll wheel down and up. The cool thing about it though is that when you press enter to take the screenshot, it increases your game's resolution as it takes it to make sure that your screenshot is going to be the highest quality. Boss bar is small as it just adds the health bar that you usually get in a boss fight, but for mini bosses as well. The last 2 mods here are to do with the weapon parts in the game, and if you're familiar with Borderlands then you'll know that every single weapon that gets dropped will have different parts from different manufacturers and therefore adjust the stats of the weapon. Part Notifier will just take the guessing out of this whole thing. It will just tell you exactly what parts are on your weapon, and then you can search up to see what they do if you're unaware. Spare parts is then kind of the extension of this mod. Well, it will actually take it a step further and let you take parts from certain guns and place them on a different one. This can be a bit overpowered, but it's got a bunch of different restrictions, like you can't just put any part on any weapons, they have to be actually compatible with each other. There are also instances where depending on what parts you put on what weapons, it might actually delete one of the weapons. I really love this idea, and I think it'd be super cool if the game actually implements it, say in Borderlands 4 or onwards, maybe having a weapon workbench where you can do this kind of thing. One thing's for sure though, the community legitimately love this game to bits, and I just love to, see it as kind of a passerby. I'm not really in this modding community, but to come here and kind of just go through the mods that are available and see how incredible they all are is really cool. I remember way back, the modding community was nowhere near as extensive as it is today. I remember using stuff like BLCMM and messing around with the console to get mods to work, and it was really cool at the time, but it's so much more confusing than this new Python SDK, and I just think that if you're watching this and you haven't played in a while, or it's your first time, this is an amazing point to jump in. If you want to see more of this kind of content, then not only does subscribing, liking and commenting help out a bunch, but also I need to thank the amazing people over on Patreon. I post there with anything exclusive, like behind the scenes content or what's coming up and what I'm working on. I also recently added some wallpapers over there so you can download some of the thumbnails without all the watermarks and wording. And also there's much more stuff like special Discord roles in our community server. So if you want to become a Patreon member, use the link in the description and you can join from just £1 a month. If you enjoyed this video, then I bet you'd like watching me remaster God of War in only 10 days with 0 experience. See you over there.